Welcome into the On3 studios here in Nashville, Tennessee. It is the Wiltfong Whip Around with Steve Wiltfong. Today is Thursday, June 13th, and I am your host, Josh Newberg, and we got a ton of official visit action to talk about today. A lot of five-star intel on the Whip Around, but before we get into it all, you guys do me a favor, hit subscribe to the On3 Recruit channel, your best source of recruiting anywhere on YouTube. All right. Let's bring on the great Steve Wiltfong. And Steve, we got so much to cover, but we are going to start in Austin, Texas, where the Horns have a big in-state visit weekend on tap. Here's a look at who's coming in. Just a few of the guys. Go to InsideTexas.com for a full rundown. But let's start with wide receiver DeCorian Moore. Not just any wide receiver. He's the number one wide receiver in America. Decommitted from LSU a couple weeks ago, but was back in Baton Rouge over the weekend. Now he's going to be in Texas. Do you feel good about where the Horns stand heading into this official visit?
Absolutely. I think if you're putting betting odds on the four schools still in play for DeCorian Moore, Texas, LSU, Ohio State, and Oregon, the Longhorns would be the favorite. I think ultimately he will end up in Austin based on the way it's setting up right now. But this is a huge official visit because he is coming off two great trips, one to Ohio State where he got his family's blessing to be a Buckeye if he wants to be a Buckeye. And then LSU, he was the only recruit in Baton Rouge last weekend as Brian Kelly and his coaching staff were able to invest a lot of time into DeCorian Moore. But with the Longhorns, this is the school that the family has grown up rooting for. They bleed orange and blue there. Orange for the Texas Longhorns, blue for the Dallas Cowboys. It would be special for him to play for Texas with that family rooting history. But then you add in Steve Sarkisian, where he's taken this program, college football playoff last year. Family thinks that this team is SEC ready to come in and make an impact. They're competing for championships there. Steve Sarkisian, what he's done with wide receivers in his history, what he did at Alabama, what he's doing at Texas right now is certainly very attractive. Proximity to home is also another thing Texas has going for it. We know he knows a lot of players in that locker room, and we also know NIL will not be a hurdle for Texas as they recruit DeCorian Moore.
Yeah, I love where Texas stands with DeCorian Moore. I know there's still a little bit left to this recruitment, but I like the Horns' chances. Speaking of liking their chances, Riley Pettijohn trending at almost 95% on the recruiting prediction machine to Texas. Now, I know he's been to USC. I know he's been to Ohio State and some others, but it still seems like the Longhorns have a stranglehold on this recruitment.
Yeah, I like where Texas stands as well for Riley Pettijohn coming into this visit, although he was just at USC this past weekend, and some folks that spent time with the Pettijohn family during that trip to USC says don't sleep on the Trojans. And USC, they have done an incredible job of getting guys on campus and then ultimately closing them. But Texas, the Pettijohn family was back in Austin for the spring game. They loved the energy from the fan base that day, the pageantry. They saw talent in every single position room at Texas, so they love where this program is going moving forward. And then it's not just about the on-field coaches like Coach Sarkisian that they built a great relationship with, but Pettijohn and his family, they're close with guys like Coach Gilbert and that strong off-field recruiting staff. So they feel very comfortable around Texas, that staff. They love where the program is at, and I still love where Texas sits with this young man coming into the visit.
All right. Now, one prospect on campus from Mesquite, Texas is Lamont Rogers, but he's not one that Texas leads for on the recruiting prediction machine. Missouri does. Do you feel like the Horns have some ground to make up with Lamont Rogers this weekend?
I do, but I think Texas is a program that can make up fast ground with these prospects once they get them on campus. I also think that Texas A&M is right there for Lamont Rogers, and now it's Texas's turn to swing the racket.
All right, Steve, anything else you want to hit on when it comes to Horns recruiting this weekend?
Well, Smith Aragbo, the on 300 edge rusher, is expected at Texas this weekend. Texas Tech has had some recent buzz around them as of late, so we'll see if Texas is able to change that trajectory. And then they have a couple key out-of-state prospects that are going to be there this weekend. Defensive tackle Kevin Wynn, offensive tackle Nick Brooks, who has been very impressionable, was at Georgia 2 weekends ago. Bulldogs start to get some RPM buzz, including my forecast. Then he was at USC. There's a lot of people that think he could end up at USC. Now it's Texas's turn, so we'll see what they do with the visit. Marco Jones is down to Texas A&M in Michigan. So the Longhorns getting the last official visit of those three could be a big needle-moving opportunity for them.
All right, Texas fans, let me know. Do you guys agree with my take on DeCorian Moore? Are the Horns the leader? Let me know. Comment section below. All right, it's Auburn. We're going to head down to the Plains, talk some five-star recruiting, because this weekend, the Tigers host quarterback Julian Lewis, the number 2 quarterback in the country, coming off that official visit to USC, the team that he's committed to. He will visit Auburn this weekend. Steve, how you feeling about Julian Lewis as we head into this big Auburn official visit?
Well, it's no secret there have been times this calendar year where we've thought maybe Auburn has had the most momentum in
Mm-hmm.
this recruitment. But as I talked to you this morning, I think I would still lean towards USC coming off a fantastic official visit to the Trojans campus where he got a chance to get back around Lincoln Riley, Coach Heward, and that staff. Obviously, he knows that if he starts under center for USC, great chance to be the first pick in the NFL draft, great chance to win a Heisman. But most importantly, he got a chance to get around the rest of that coaching staff and see the level that USC is recruiting. They have the number 3 class in the country. They've hit on some of the best defensive targets in the country. Now, can USC keep them? It's going to be a battle. But for Julian Lewis, it's about, can USC recruit at a championship level? And I think right now he's seeing that. Now with
Mm-hmm.
Auburn, there's certainly a school that remains an intriguing option. He was just on campus recently with his Carrollton High teammates. They won the 7-on-7 football competition that Auburn hosts for high school programs. He also took multiple visits in the spring where he got to watch him practice, got to sit down with Hugh Freeze and company. Proximity from home, Auburn is exciting. The way the Tigers have recruited receivers since Hugh Freeze has gotten there is something that really stands out to him. So Auburn, I still view them as the biggest threat to USC. And this is a big visit for them this weekend as they try and put the finishing touches on a second straight top 10 recruiting class. No prospect more important than Julian Lewis.
Yeah, and you're right. Thinking back 5, 6, 7 weeks ago, I really had a different feel for Julian Lewis and Auburn. Now heading into this visit, I mean, I don't want to say they're on the outside looking in, but they got a lot of ground to make up to kind of loosen up that commitment that he has to USC. All right, one more prospect I want to talk about that's visiting Auburn this weekend is Bama flip target athlete Daryl Johnson. Now, he committed to Alabama about 2 months ago. Auburn hasn't let up. He's from Eastman, Georgia, and he'll be on campus this weekend. Are you thinking that there's a flip chance here with Daryl Johnson and Auburn?
Well, he's keeping a few schools warm, so we'll see what happens
Yeah.
this weekend. Daryl was at Alabama this past weekend, had a phenomenal experience, reminded him of all the reasons why he gave Alabama an early commitment. So I'm not ready to say that the spatula is coming out. Auburn has kind of been spatula U since Hugh Freeze and company got there, the way that they closed that 2023 cycle strong with so many flips. They've had some monster flips, including Cam Coleman from Texas A&M last cycle. So they swing that heavy-handed spatula. Daryl Johnson is the one right there on the griddle this weekend, along with Julian Lewis. So they're going to try for some big flips, and they're going to try and nail down Eric Winters. Josh, he's a on 300 safety from in-state that Georgia had on campus last weekend, and there's a lot of Georgia buzz around there. He is a take for the Bulldogs. Kirby Smart and company like him. So with that, I think they're very interesting there, and so is Miami. So big visit for Eric Winters, who spent a lot of time on the Plains in his process and now is in town for his official visit.
All right, Auburn fans, talk to me. How do you guys feel about Julian Lewis? Do you agree with me or disagree that Auburn's maybe on the outside looking in right now and they have ground to make up? Let us know. Comment section below. All right, Steve, let's talk about the Florida Gators. There's a big weekend happening in Gainesville. Let's look at some of these names on campus, and we'll start with five-star wide receiver Dallas Wilson. The electric wide receiver from Tampa has been committed to Oregon for 14 months now. But this weekend, he'll be in Gainesville. Do you think the Gators have the best shot at flipping Dallas Wilson, if anybody can flip him from Oregon?
Yeah, so right before the show, I was told that Dallas Wilson, Florida is going to push that visit into the fall. I still view the Gators as a program that's very much in the thick of it. He's expected back at Oregon next weekend for his official visit. Dan Lanning and that staff, they're going to do everything they can to keep Dallas Wilson in the fold. He's one of their top targets, obviously, regardless of position, but he's keeping the in-state programs warm. And if Florida has the season that they want to have, what they're preparing for, what they went into the portal for, the culture that they've tried to change over the last 2 years, they're going to be a threat for a lot of these guys.
All right. Up next, we got elite in-state wide receiver Vernell Brown from Jones High School in the Orlando area. And Vernell Brown's a legacy prospect in Gainesville. And do you think heading into this, do you think that the Gators lead for Vernell Brown?
I may give them the inch. Again, talking to some sources this morning about it, there's so much love with that family for Florida, with his dad and his grandfather having attended school there and played there. In the spring, we liked Ohio State. He had a really good official visit to Ohio State as well this summer. But Florida, he's coming off a Miami visit. Florida State's in there. I think that Florida is the program that he's always loved and envisioned himself at. And so I like the Gators for this young man coming into the weekend.
Moving on to DB Hilton Stubbs out of Jacksonville. And when he committed to USC, it was a shocker. But nobody was more shocked probably than the Florida Gators. But this weekend, Stubbs is back in town for an official visit. Not saying that he's on flip watch for this weekend, but do you think Stubbs is somebody the Gators can turn?
I think that it's a long road for USC to get Stubbs from now to getting his letter of intent. Now, he had a fantastic visit 2 weekends ago to USC when the Trojans hosted some of the other top safeties in the country, Trey McNutt and Jonah Williams. And he is super excited about Deonta Lynn and the trajectory of USC's program. Games are going to be played this fall. If USC goes out and has a fantastic season, guys like Julian Lewis, Hilton Stubbs, be tough to flip. But Florida was a school at one point we thought led. He's keeping Miami warm. There's some others in play. So this is just another opportunity for him to get back around Coach Will Harris, Coach Billy Napier, and that Florida staff.
All right. Linebacker Tavian Wilson. He's the last prospect I want to hit on this weekend, but there are more. So go check out GatorsOnline.com. They got a full rundown of this weekend, and they'll be doing a great job throughout the weekend updating it. All right. Linebacker Tavian Wallace, this really feels like it's coming to the end of his recruitment. Last week, he was at Georgia. This week, he'll be at UF. Next weekend, FSU. How do you read this recruitment as we are like in the middle of these 3 visits, and then we know he's going to make his decision in July?
Well, I'm going to lump in On3's number 1 linebacker, Ty Jackson, with Tavian Wallace. They were both in Georgia last weekend. Georgia's one of the front runners. But for Tavian Wallace, my RPM's on Florida State, but he did grow up a Gators fan. So we'll see what kind of feelings he gets coming out of this visit. Does he think Florida's on the right track? Is he willing to invest in the Gators preseason and bet on them in the fall to have the kind of year they want to have? I think Florida's going to give him a good visit. And Ty Jackson, I look at Alabama, Georgia, and Florida as 3 of the front runners. He is not going to decide until maybe the last day, December 4th, early signing period. So official visit to Florida this weekend, get them back to the swamp for a game or 2 this fall, have a great year. And maybe we're talking about the Florida Gators at the end of the race for Ty Jackson.
All right, Gator fans, let us know. Who do you feel best about this weekend? Comment section below. All right, we got another 5-star weekend in Knoxville, and this one is huge. We will start with the big man himself, the number 1 offensive tackle in America, David Sanders. He will be making his return to Knoxville. I think he's been there about a baker's dozen times this offseason. It feels like every other weekend you see David Sanders and George McIntyre hanging out together in Knoxville. But this weekend is the official visit, and why is this one so important?
Well, he's done everything at Tennessee. He's been to games in Knoxville, said it's some of the best game day atmospheres he's ever been to. He went to the spring game. He's done a day in a life of a Tennessee football player where he shadowed a player and attended some classes. He's really gotten to know Coach Ellerby and that coaching staff. Interesting tidbit I picked up on Coach Ellerby from fellow 5-star Josh Petty's official visit, which was midweek this week, and Tennessee is trying to make a move on Florida State and Ohio State and others there, is that Coach Ellerby's wife takes Tennessee offensive linemen out to dinner a couple of weeks just to make sure they're doing well. It's a major family feel at Tennessee from that coaching staff and the way they treat their players. And I know that's attractive to David Sanders and his family as well, as they look for a place for their son to be very comfortable. We know for sure that NIL will not be a hurdle at all for Tennessee Volunteers as they recruit David Sanders Jr. He's got some big trips coming up. He's got Alabama midweek, then Ohio State at the end. I still think Georgia, Tennessee, and Ohio State are the ones I'm watching the closest. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he'll end up at Clemson there and there. Nebraska, Alabama, South Carolina, the other finalists. But Tennessee certainly at or near the top coming into this 4th visit that I know of this calendar year to Tennessee, and it's an exciting time.
All right, we got a pair of 5-star wide receivers that'll be on campus, Caleb Cunningham and Jamie French. And at certain times throughout the spring, felt like Tennessee was surging. Then at certain times, it felt like they were falling back. Who do you think heading into this weekend, Tennessee has a better shot at landing, Caleb Cunningham or Jamie French?
Well, I think that Caleb Cunningham's been so impressionable. He went to Auburn, named him the leader, then went to Ole Miss later in the week. Now it's up in the air if he goes to Big Cat Weekend or Juice Weekend, which is the same weekend in July at Ole Miss. He just had a fantastic official visit at Florida, gave it a 10.5 out of a 10. So he's really, these programs that are on his short list, he's super excited about. So now he comes into Tennessee. So we'll see where the Vols sit coming out. Jamie French is another that's been impressionable, right? Ohio State, one-time Alabama commit. Ohio State leads in the spring, takes a Texas visit. Longhorns move in front, was at LSU 2 weekends ago. LSU is at the very least even that one out. He was at Tennessee's 865 live event with guys like David Sanders. That has put Tennessee in position to get this official visit. So we'll see what happens with Tennessee coming out of it. They certainly trailed those schools I mentioned coming in. Same goes with Caleb Cunningham. But it's their turn to showcase what they got.
Yeah, but Tennessee also got a impressionable visit from Jamie French. Remember at that 865 live event, he said that Tennessee was, quote, definitely in my top 3. At that point, he wasn't naming a top 3 in order, but a couple weeks later, he did name a top 3 in order, and Tennessee was nowhere to be found. So we'll see what happens. I kind of feel like Tennessee has ground to make up on both of these guys. We'll see what happens. Edge, Isaiah Gibson, and I know USC fans don't like us to continue to keep talking about their commits, but if their commits keep taking visits, we are going to keep talking about them. And this weekend, number 1 edge, Isaiah Gibson, is on the road. He's in Knoxville. What do you think of the Vols' chances of flipping him?
Well, Coach Henne, USC, they've done a fantastic job of getting these guys super interested in USC, getting their verbals. And again, if USC comes out and has the kind of season that they want to have, one where they challenge for the college football playoff like they did in Lincoln Riley's first season, maybe all this conversation's put to bed. But when you go into SEC country and land SEC guys away from programs in closer proximity, it's certainly a challenge to keep these guys in the fold. But games will be played. USC still maintaining those strong relationships. But I think Isaiah Gibson, I think he's going to be the hardest one for them to keep, more so than Julian Lewis, more so than Justice Terry, more so than Hilton Stubbs. There's a lot of Georgia buzz around him. Tennessee is an interesting one. They're the dark horse for Isaiah Gibson. Chad Simmons has written as much, our colleague, and I feel the same way.
All right, let's do a little 5-star rundown. We'll start at Oklahoma, where a pair of Texas 5-star offensive tackles will be visiting. Ty Haywood, Michael Fasusi, heading into the trip. Which one do you think OU sits in a better place with?
Yeah, Oklahoma in the middle of it for all the elite offensive linemen in the country. That's because of Bill Bedenbaugh. He's arguably the best offensive line coach in the country. He can point to the NFL draft year in and year out. Some of the top guys in the league doing great from his tutelage. And I think there's been times where Oklahoma has led for both of these guys, Fasusi and Ty Haywood. With Fasusi, maybe A&M starting to grab that edge. We've talked a lot about Texas, but maybe it's A&M with the momentum. He's been there at least 4 times in the Elko era, coming off a great official visit. I do think Missouri is a dark horse there. We talk about NIL not being an obstacle for a couple programs on the show. NIL is no obstacle for the Missouri Tigers right now for some of the guys that they're going after. That includes Michael Fasusi, but he's excited about Texas A&M, but he's always been excited about Oklahoma, Bill Bedenbaugh, the Sooners. And with Ty Haywood, Bill Bedenbaugh, he has known his coaches for so long. I think there's a trust there. I've asked Ty Haywood, who's the best offensive line coach in college football, before. He said it was Bill Bedenbaugh. He's coming off a really good visit to Alabama. That was his dream school growing up. You got A&M. They've gotten him to campus a few times. Texas is swinging at both of these guys, but it's Oklahoma's turn, and they've been one of the front runners for each of these guys for their entire process.
All right, it's Miami's turn to take a big swing at 5-star cornerback DJ Pickett. Coming off this visit to Georgia, we hear a lot about LSU. We hear a lot about Oregon. This weekend, though, it's Miami. What do you think of the Canes' chances with DJ Pickett?
I think they're one of the favorites. His decision is going to be made in October. He's going to watch these teams play the first month of the season, attend some games. He's going to be at the Florida-Miami game for his official visit to Gainesville, but that'll also be another opportunity for Miami to show where their program's at, and he'll be able to see that with his own eyes in a big road game for the Hurricanes. But I think he grew up a Miami fan. His family's got so many ties to the school. And while LSU is the program that I would give the edge to right now, Oregon, Miami, and Florida are some other front runners.
All right, let's talk Florida State five-star recruits on campus this weekend, and there's a pair of them. Khalil Lockett out of the state of Texas and defensive lineman Justice Terry, who is committed to USC. They are both going to be in on official visits this weekend. There'll be more. You guys can go to warchant.com for more on info on that. But I think they're both long shots coming in. How do you feel about these two and FSU's chances?
Don't disagree, although Khalil Lockett really enjoyed his visit to Florida State in the spring, just loved the culture and the environment that Mike Norvell and his staff have created, and his offense and what he's done historically with wideouts is all attractive to him. You know, Texas A&M, LSU have made this one difficult on Texas. Texas was for sure the leader going into the official visits for Khalil Lockett. They're going to get the last visit next weekend, but we'll see what Florida State does as they make their case, because LSU and A&M certainly did just that.
All right. And Naeem Offord, he's the big-time Ohio State commit, five-star DB out of the state of Alabama. He's going to be visiting Oregon this weekend. But bigger threat to Ohio State, Oregon or in-state Alabama Crimson Tide?
Well, I would have said Oregon before last weekend's visit to Alabama. I still think that there's a major trust with Ohio State coach Walton, what they've done with DBs. They have no questions with Ohio State. And obviously, they're still the one to beat. But this will be a second visit to Oregon this calendar year, and they've done a good job there. Alabama, that relationship with the new staff is really starting to pick up, and Auburn got an official visit earlier as well. So Oregon, it's their turn again with Naeem Offord. It's their turn with five-star tight end Lincoln Cure this weekend. He was at Oregon's spring game. This will be his third visit. He attended a game there last year. Kansas State's the RPM favorite, but A&M, Oregon making that difficult. Kansas rounds out the top four. Dorian Brew also slated to be at Oregon this weekend. I like where USC stands. I like where Ohio State stands, but maybe Oregon can make a move there as well.
All right, let's go to Ohio State, where offensive tackle Josh Petty is visiting. And this is interesting because just a couple weeks ago, you were confident enough to put in an RPM pick for Petty to Florida State, but then a visit to Tennessee and now a visit to Ohio State. Are you still confident in that Florida State pick for Josh Petty?
Yeah, and he also got a visit into Stanford, and they're intriguing as well. I'm still rocking with FSU right now, Josh, but Ohio State, they weren't even originally in his top schools. They weren't on his visit list. He took that spring unofficial, took one to Ohio State, took one to Notre Dame, and it was Ohio State that surged into this. He maneuvered some visits around. Georgia Tech got a visit as well, maneuvered some other visits. Some other schools got dropped. Ohio State's in, so it's obvious they're very intrigued with the Buckeyes right now.
Yeah. All right, Steve, take us out of here. Anything else that you are watching heading into this big visit weekend across the country?
Yeah, Derek Meadows is going to take his visit to Notre Dame this weekend. He is Notre Dame's top remaining target, regardless of position. They want to continue to add dynamic players to that position room as they try and get this program an inch or two closer to winning a national championship. And Derek Meadows is a very pivotal recruit. They were way ahead of the other contenders for him. They're battling Alabama. They're battling Georgia. They're battling Michigan, Tennessee. Notre Dame was way out in front in offering and prioritizing Meadows, and I think that has given them the inch or two at this point in this recruitment, and they get them back for this weekend's official visit. That'll do it for today's episode of Wiltfong Whip Around. We will be back next Monday breaking down some of the big visits. There'll certainly be new On3 RPMs if the last 2 weekends were any indication of that. Also, tune into the 5-Star Flex with Phillip Dukes, the inside scoop with our guy, Josh Newberg, and all the other various content on this channel by hitting like and subscribe. Have a great weekend. We'll see you on Monday.